For all of you waiting, we are just going to start as soon as the chair enters the meeting.
Yes, Liz, you could start the meeting.
You see where my hesitation's at. I'm looking at my cell phone. He's our chair is jumping on now, but he said to go ahead and start the meeting. So let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is our Napa Valley Transportation Authority agenda for Wednesday. Okay, so we're going to call this meeting to order for Wednesday, August 18th, the NVTA Authority. It is now 1:03 p.m. Laura, would you like to start with the preamble?
Yes, I will run that right now.
Thank you.
Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar pursuant to the provision of the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is being webcast on the NVTA website. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available at our website. The chair will call upon board members, presenters, staff, and other speakers by name, ask that they speak clearly, and state their names before giving comments or remarks. Persons participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers and may be part of the Zoom recording. Board members and members of the public participating by Zoom who wish to speak should use the raise hand feature or *9 on their phone. Teleconference attendees will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. Phone participants must unmute themselves by pressing *6. It is requested that public speakers state their name and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received at info@nvta.gov.
Apologies, let me unmute that. Okay.
.ca.gov after 5 p.m. yesterday will be entered into the record but not read out loud. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they are free to do so and should raise their hand. The chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. Panelists should note that the chat feature is active. However, please be aware that anything typed in the chat will be subject to public disclosure. The chat feature is not active to attendees. In order to get the full Zoom experience, please make sure your application is up to date.
Okay, our chair has joined us, so I pass this to our chair.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair Leslie, for joining us. Why don't you lead us in the pledge, Liz, if you may?
Absolutely. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic with which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Vice Chair Leslie. So let's move on to roll call, please.
Leon Garcia.
Here.
Mark Joseph.
Here.
Gary Kraus.
Here.
Liz Alessio.
Present.
Scott Sedgley.
Here.
Alfredo Pedroza.
Here.
Belia Ramos.
Here.
Paul Doring.
Here.
Jeff Ellsworth.
Here.
John Dunbar.
Here.
Carrie Dorman.
Here.
And Member Canning and Member Weir are absent today, but we do have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much, Laura. Let's move on to the adoption of the agenda. I'll look to board directors if there's any changes. I see no hand raised. Laura, do we have any public comment on the adoption of the agenda?
We do not.
All right, with that, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved, Garcia.
I heard a few there. I got Garcia, that was audible. I will
I'll
entertain
second
a
the motion.
All right, so first by Director Garcia, second by Vice Chair Lesio. Roll call vote, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley,
yes,
Alfredo Pedroza,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
yes,
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
yes,
Carrie Dorman,
yes,
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much, everyone. Let's move on to public comment. This is the time when any person in the public can comment on any item that's not on today's agenda. Laura, do we have any members of the public that wish to provide public comment at this time?
I do not.
All right, I don't see any. I'll just give it a moment if anyone wanted to jump in. All right, seeing none, let's move on to item 6, chairpersons, board members, MTC ABAG update. I will turn first to our ABAG representatives. Do you have a report out? I don't
we do not,
see-
Chair. We're on recess.
All right.
No meeting in August.
All right, thank you very much. In terms of MTC, we are also on recess. However, we've continued to have some meetings while the commission's on recess. And just for the benefit of the board, we all know with the recent numbers of the RENA allocation of what it means to our local municipalities of having to meet those pretty high numbers. There is discussions. I've been working with the president of ABAG, Mayor Arreguín, around potentially creating a regional funding source to support local municipalities and trying to get more housing units built and also being able to deliver on those goals. So there's some initial discussions happening in the region, and there's some regional polling that we've heard about around potentially putting a measure on the ballot in 2022, again, to support local municipalities meeting those RENA numbers, which is, we all know the huge need we have of housing in our region. So that's on the kind of ABAG MTC leadership side. And then on the MTC, we just continue the work of the Blue Ribbon Committee, which has concluded. And we're going to be having a workshop at MTC to talk about some of the next steps and continuing the momentum to ensure that, again, we deliver on those things of restoring ridership and truly making our transportation system in the region seamless and really creating predictability for riders and really some incentives around that as well. So I'll pause to see if there's any questions on any reporting out. Mayor Dunbar.
Yes, thank you for acknowledging the discussions about RENA allocation numbers. Are you including, or if not, I would suggest including representatives from the building construction industries so that we could figure out, there are cities that have many projects that are approved waiting to be built, and there are a variety of reasons why they aren't. But I think we also need to hear a perspective of the actual builders of these homes, how to move things forward.
No, thank you for that perspective, Mayor Dunbar. And again, being a representative from a smaller county, we try to bring that perspective, especially, with, San Francisco, San Jose, they have really robust infrastructure, but it's important to bring a perspective for a smaller county. So right now we're just in the initial stages of having some discussions. We've also mentioned we need to reach out to CSAC and the League of Cities to ensure that there's a partnership, recognizing that we at the local level are the ones that are having to support these allocation numbers. But again, getting units built requires a lot of local support. So I'll definitely make sure we bring some advocacy to your point there. All right, I don't see any other hands raised from directors. At this point, we're going to move on to item 7, director's update. Director Miller.
Well, good afternoon. We've had a very busy month, and so I'm happy to report the first thing is that we are at 100% project specification and estimate completing that phase for Soskel Junction. The invitation for bids will be released in October, and I just wanted to acknowledge Sanjay Mishra for his perseverance, never losing his cool, no matter what threatened or endangered species mitigation requirements were thrown at him. So thank you, Sanjay, for hanging in there. And the maintenance facility staff held a mandatory pre-bid meeting on August 11th, and there were 60 participants, including 17 primes. Bids are due on September 8th. The bid document is a required element for the TIFIA loan. And so we have a few outstanding items that we need to provide to the Build America Bureau for approval of that loan, but we are still scheduled to be approved in October. Once the funding is secured, we will request the board to award the construction contract. So I'd like to acknowledge the entire team on this. It's Sanjay Mishra, Rebecca Shank, Tony Onorato, Roxana Marati, and Farhad Farazman for all the work that they've done to move this project forward. The Vine Trail, the final kink in the Calistoga to St. Helena Vine Trail project has been ironed out with Caltrans, and approval of the final design is anticipated next week. The invitation for bid is expected to be released in September, and staff will seek the board's approval to award that project in November. NVTA will receive $20,000 for 5 electric vehicle charging stations that will be located at the Imola Park and Ride. The award came from the Bay Area Air Quality and Management District, is from their CHARGE program. And I'd like to acknowledge Diana Meehan for successfully pursuing the regional grant funds. They're hard to come by, and I'm sure she had to jump through many hoops to get them. There is going to be a public meeting on September 22nd that will be virtual meeting to seek public outreach on the State Route 29 intersection improvements. That's part of the Napa Forward program. And we will make sure that you're included in the information when that goes out. And then just a quick reminder that the NVTA-TA board will convene for an in-person retreat on Monday, September 13th, between 10 and 2 at the Westin Barassa Hotel on McKinstry Street in Napa to consider approaches to a revised sales tax measure. And then finally, I want to introduce Kelly Hirschberg's replacement, Ricky Gao. Ricky joined Caltrans in 2008. He was promoted to Regional Project Manager for Napa County Projects and the Corridor Manager for State Route 37 in July of 2021. Prior to that, he served as a Senior Project Manager, managing projects mainly in the city and county of San Francisco for 4 years, as an Assistant Project Manager, managing projects in Solano County for 3 years, and as a Project Engineer in the Office of Advanced Planning, delivering project initiation documents for 3 years. Ricky received his Bachelor of Art degree, magna cum laude, in biology and a minor in computer science from Berea College in Kentucky, and Master of Science degree in civil engineering from the University of Texas at Austin. Ricky's a licensed professional engineer and a project management professional, and we are all very looking forward to working with them. And so welcome, Ricky. You want to say a few words?
Yeah, thank you, Kate. I'm very excited to join the team and working with NVTA and representing Caltrans and to help NVTA and Napa County to deliver all the projects. So I'm very looking forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
And that concludes my report.
Chair, you're muted.
No matter how many times you do this, I was just thanking Kate for her report and asking if anyone has any questions. And I don't see any. And also just welcome to Ricky. We look forward to your future updates. You have some big shoes to fill, Ricky, so welcome aboard. All right, seeing no further questions from the board, at this point, we're going to move on to our consent calendar. We have 2 items, 8.1 and 8.2. Laura, do we have any public comment on consent?
We do not.
All right, we'll bring it back to the board. Do we have any board director questions on our consent calendar? If not, I will entertain a motion for approval.
Joseph, so moved.
We have first by Joseph, second by Kraus. Roll call vote, please.
The notes will reflect Member Dunbar's abstaining from 8.1. but we can take roll call for all of the consent items due to his absence last meeting.
All right.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Alfredo Pedroza,
Yes.
Delia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Carrie Dorman,
Yes.
John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you very much, Laura. Let's move on to our regular items. Our first one is 9.1, State Route 29, Imola Park and Ride of Board of Construction. This is found on page 20 to 36. And who is taking lead on this, Kate?
Alberto is.
Okay, Alberto,
I
take it away.
Have a few screens here. Hold on. All right, I think I've got, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
All right, good afternoon, board members. Alberto Esqueda presenting item 9.1, SR 29, and Imola Avenue Park and Ride Award for Construction. At the end of 2017, I completed a buying transit study where we took a look at NVTA's express bus routes and analyzed how to make these routes more efficient. Many improvements were proposed by this study. One of them was to rehabilitate the park and ride lot and construct bus facilities at the Imola Park and Ride at SR 29. The proposed improvements, like I said, included repaving the parking lot and building these bus stops and passenger facilities on the SR 29 southbound on-ramp and the SR 29 northbound off-ramp. The concept behind this improvement is that if the bus is traveling on SR 29, it does not have to deviate or its route to border light passengers. For example, if a bus is traveling down SR 29 southbound from the Trancas Park and Ride, the bus currently has to maneuver through the city of Napa to the Sausco Gateway Transit Center and then continue on Sausco Avenue to reach SR 29. So constructing these two improvements on the Imola Park and Ride will allow the bus to travel directly from Trancas Park and Ride to the Imola Park and Ride, which will reduce travel time roughly around 10 minutes. And we anticipate operating costs will be reduced $31,000 annually. Staff has been working on the design of the project with Kimley Horn and coordinating with Caltrans since March 2019. We achieved 100% design last month, and we released an invitation for bids a few weeks later on July 21st. We advertised the IFB through multiple channels, including our website, and we received 5 bids. However, OC Jones and Sons submitted the lowest responsible bid at $2,174,698.40. This is almost $400,000 under the engineer's estimate, so we were very glad to see that number. We included a 17% contingency, which encumbers the rest of the funds allocated to this project. So there is a fiscal impact to constructing this project. The impact to the agency is going to be roughly $2,174,698 plus the contingency of $374,309.60. However, the project is fully funded through a variety of grants and funding that has been secured. The benefits of this project speak for themselves, and they are supported by the variety of funding sources that we received. We have TFCA, we have our Surface Transportation Program funds. We also have Lifeline Cycle 5 program funds, and low carbon transit operation program funds. So we do have two alternatives that the board can consider instead of awarding the contract. The first alternative is to forego making the improvements at the SR 29 and Imola Park and Ride and leave it in its current condition. Alternative 2 is to not award the contract to OC Jones and Sons and rebid the project. However, staff is recommending that NVTA board authorize the executive director to enter into and make minor modifications to construction agreement number 21-19 with OC Jones and Sons for the construction of Imola Park and Ride improvements in the amount not to exceed $2,500,049 and $7. And I will say that as a personal anecdote, I started thinking about this project some 20 years ago when I was in high school, and every time my parents drove me by here, I thought we could revitalize, or I would ask why this project stopped being revitalized. So now 20 years later, we're making those improvements, and I'm very happy to be working on it, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Alberto, for that. So I believe that concludes your presentation. Thank you for the detailed presentation there. And we do have some questions for directors. Director Dorman, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Escada, for your report. What is the total cost of the project expected? I know there were some design costs. You mentioned a Caltrans right away. I mean, what's our drive out, we estimate?
So there is another $400,000 that we've currently expended in design.
And so we expect it to come in somewhere around 3 million. Does that cover everything?
Right. Yes.
And the 400, we've already paid that.
Yes, we're in the process of completing that. We also received TFCA grants for that portion of the project.
And then later on in the, thank you. And later on in the agenda, we have an item for on-call contracts for $1.7 million. And I think that this project is mentioned as one reason we would need them. Is that going to be additional money, or is that swept into the 2.549 we're talking about now?
Sanjay can answer to that.
That will be additional money because that the CM that will cover the construction management, biologist, archaeologist, and material testing for 3 different capital projects. So that dollar amount is not included in this $2.5 million.
And so do you have any idea of how much that will be of the 1.7 we're looking at?
Yes, roughly as a calculation, roughly about 10% of your construction dollars is being spent on CM and other services during construction. So say this project is $2.5 million, I expect roughly $250,000 to be spent from that 1.7 million that we're asking now, even if the total ask is close to 3.5, but that is all we have budget for now. I'll explain that in the next item.
Okay, so we do have the $1.7 million.
That's correct.
Budgeted.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then
I do want to.
Do you have some idea now on a construction schedule?
We anticipate starting construction as soon as this is awarded, if it's awarded, sometime in the fall. And we anticipate roughly 90 days of construction. So if it all goes well and rainy season permits, we should be completed sometime. It should be completed sometime in the spring.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Director Dorman. Do we have any other questions from any other directors? Director Joseph.
Yes, after that conversation, I just wanted to be clear. We talked about this project costing about $3 million. The 2.5 plus about $500,000 sunk costs. But it's really $3.25 million when you throw in the construction inspection. Is that
That would be correct.
okay? All right, just wanted to be sure.
All right, thank you, Director Joseph. Seeing no other questions from directors, Laura, do we have any members of the public that wish to comment on this item?
We do not.
All right, so I'll bring it back to the board and I will entertain a motion.
So moved, Kraus.
Second, Dunbar.
All right, and Director Kraus, that was the staff recommendation?
Yes.
All right, so we have first by Director Kraus, second by Director Dunbar. Roll call vote, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Alfredo Pedroza,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Carrie Dorman,
Yes.
John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you very much. Let's move on to item 9.2, construction manager, biologist, archaeologist, and material testing services. This is found on page 37 to 82. I believe Sanjay is going to be reporting out.
Yes. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and Directors. The item presented to you under the 9.2 is an action item requesting approval for one of the options presented in the staff report for construction management, biologist, archaeologist, and material testing services. As the board knows, it will be delivering 3 major capital projects in the coming 2 years, out of which 2 of them are currently advertised, and for Imola Park and Ride, we have already received the bid. Bus maintenance facility at Sihi Court is expected to open bid September 8, and we are also going to advertise for Vine Trail project between St. Helena to Calistoga during first week of September. So this combined cost, construction cost of these 3 projects is approximately $40 million, which is going to be delivered over this coming 2 years. So on June 14th of this year, we released a request for proposal for construction management, biologist, archaeologist, and material testing services to oversee the delivery of these capital projects. The RFP was advertised on NVTA's website, public purchase, and other regional platforms. We received a total of 7 proposals. The proposals are evaluated on 5 criteria: project understanding, experience and qualification, project team organization, familiarity with state and federal process, and financial oversight. Out of the 7 proposals, we interviewed 4 firms. We are recommending to enter into an on-call contract with 3 of those firms who submitted their proposal. Kleinfelder Construction Services has put together a very qualified team of consultants and offers all the services we requested in the RFP. KCS is able to provide CM, material testing, biological monitoring, and archaeological services with their partners, and which will be useful for our projects. And their proposal was one of the best proposals we received, as they have proposed a construction inspection services who has this building experience similar to our bus maintenance facility. Park Engineering is the second proposal, who had staff in their proposal who had trail experience and highway construction experience, and we also like to have an on-call contract with them. Sequoia Ecological Consulting, they are a Bay Area headquartered, small, disadvantaged, and a woman-owned business enterprise, which will support NVTA with the biological and archaeological tasks for these 3 capital projects. So as I just mentioned, based on the total construction dollar amounts of $40 million, The estimated cost of all these services during construction is approximately $4 million. But as we have our part-time construction manager on board, we are estimating that cost of outside procurement is roughly about $3.5 million. However, our current project funding have only $1.7 million, which we have budgeted for these three projects. An additional $1.8 million will come from project funding or other sources to be determined at a later date, and how we're going to go about it. Now we'll come back to the board during that time when we need that funds, once we identify the source of funds. Staff is requesting that the NVTA board authorize the executive director to make minor modifications and approve agreement 2120, 21-21, and 21-22 with the above three proposals for a not to exceed amount of $1.7 million as current available funding permits. Other alternative, the action the board can take, defer all these CM biological services or archaeological services and risk not having adequate staff or expertise to manage the construction, which may result in non-compliance with the permit requirements for all these projects, and we may incur possible fines from the permitting agencies. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you, Sanjay. Great report. At this time, I'll see if there's any director questions for Sanjay.
Chair Pedrosa, may I just make one clarification?
Yeah, go ahead, Dr.
Yeah,
Miller.
sure. So the shortfall is primarily linked to the Vine Trail. And so we will know more about what funding is available when that project goes out to bid and we get the proposals in. So that is the sort of missing link to this.
Got it. Thank you, Director Miller. And I see a few hands raised now. All right, let's start with Director Doring and then Director Dorman and then Director Dunbar.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarification purposes, I'm a little confused by the RFP process. Was there only one RFP sent out or three separate RFPs? And with respect to Kleinfelder, I noticed in the staff report that Kleinfelder says it put together a very qualified team responsive to all of the services requested in the RFP. So it leads me to believe, well, why wouldn't we make a deal with Kleinfelder and maybe drop that price down to do all of it? Maybe I just misunderstand the bidding process. If you can help me understand that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. So this is a construction inspection service, not really like a contractor's bid. It's a architectural engineering services. They are mostly man hours, how the inspectors' hours being provided by all these bidders. So yes, we can actually award this to only one bidder proposer, and that would be fine as they have all the team members in their proposal. But when we are evaluating, we understood that all the proposers, Kleinfelder's other parts who they have actually have joint venture to provide those services may not have those Bay Area experiences nearby. And we cannot ask them to, because we cannot evaluate these bids based on the prices. It has to be a qualification bid only. So we could not have done that or negotiate that price with for A&E services. So we are trying to basically juggle and have multiple options. If one consultant fails to actually provide a qualified personnel, we can actually go to the next person, the next on-call engineering contract. We can have that qualified person available for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Doring and then Director Dorman.
Thank you, and thank you for the report. I'd like to follow up first on something that Mr. Mistra said. It was a qualifications only. Does that mean the price, we don't know anything about the actual price that will be charged if we use them?
We know, now we know, once we qualified them, there is a cost per hour per expertise. They have provided a cost, but they have not provided us how many hours of that service we are going to use. It is because it's an on-call contract, so we haven't actually come to an understanding or an agreement how much of service we will request from them. And that is the reason why you don't see me actually providing a dollar number to each of these proposers from the $1.7 million, how much is allocated to KCS, how much is allocated to park engineering, and how much is, you don't see that because I have not gone to that yet.
Great, thank you. And then I'd like to follow up with something Director Miller said. I think you said the shortfall, which I understand to be 1.8 million, give or take, is linked to the Vine Trail. So is this money, this 1.7 that we're approving, is it fungible? I mean, if the Vine Trail comes in first and needs it first, I mean, how does it work, the pot of money? And thank you.
Okay, let me answer this first, then Kate, maybe you can add on to it.
Okay.
So $1.7 million currently we have budgeted for construction inspection or construction management services and all this, which we have in our budget. So Vine Trail is roughly, construction wise, we are expecting it to be in the realm of $10 million. So 10% of that is what we are expecting, is about $1 million what we're going to spend to manage the construction during construction. And if the construction bid for Vine Trail comes in well under our estimate, we may be able to have some of the funds go towards construction support. Or we may have to ask the jurisdiction to fund the rest of the dollars for construction support once we have the construction bid open. And the $1.8 million shortfall is really to, I'm calculating overall for all the three projects. I'm saying that we have $40 million worth of construction. I'm expecting $3.5 million of construction services that we have to spend. And that 1.8 million actually is reflecting just 3.5 million minus what we have right now, 1.7, and 1.8 is the rest of the requirement.
And just to add on to that, Director, we also don't know what the maintenance facility is going to come in at either. These are project funded expenses. They're not coming out of our operating budget. So we will know more when we get bids back on the Vine Trail and on the maintenance facility. And as what Sanjay said earlier, is that we will also work with the jurisdictions on the Vine Trail costs.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Director Dorman. Director Dunbar.
Thank you. My question pertains to the federal infrastructure package that we are anticipating seeing some dollars come to California and hopefully to Napa County. Would these specific funds help cover the 1.8 million deficit? That's one question. And another question is, do these projects qualify for funding, whether we have it budgeted or not? Might we have new money available to help offset the budgeted money? And are we in an advantageous position because we have shovel-ready projects? Do we know any of that yet based on that federal package?
Well, so the answer to your question is a little complicated because I don't know if the new money that we will be getting out of that, right? Some of it's going to be flowing into the formula programs, will be here in time for us to use those revenues for these projects. These projects are moving forward sooner than it's likely we will get any of that money. And the other money that's going to be available is really going to be for big infrastructure projects. And that's, again, the competitive program. And we're definitely the timing on that is not going to work either. And then there's some unknowns, right? There's some unknowns that are going on at the state, but not likely. I mean, we could probably use some of our planning funds to help gap this, but we don't really know what MTC is going to do in that arena either. But I think we really need to look to the project's budgets to fund this cost.
But I get the sense that what we can at least hope for, and I hesitate to say count on, but hope for, is kind of backfilling if we, and maybe that's not the right financial term, but if we are in fact investing this money with the need to get more, and you mentioned jurisdictional support might be necessary, we could hopefully anticipate getting funds that will help us in a year or two replenish the budget monies that we are putting toward these projects. That wasn't in the forecast prior to this infrastructure package.
Well, that's true. But the money's going to come in on formula funds to MTC, and then MTC will go through a programming cycle. But we're really expecting to get quite a bit more. And maybe it will ease some of the pain of the jurisdictions if we say, make some sort of commitment to them as part of the deal to gap the shortfall on the Vine Trail project. That's potential.
My main point really is to remind the board that we have potential new money that's never been available to us that will help us fund this going the next few years.
Thank you, Director Dunbar. All right. Seeing no further questions from the board at this time, Laura, do we have any members of the public that wish to comment on this item?
We do not.
All right. I would bring it back to the board and entertain, if there's no further discussion, a motion.
Dunbar moves the staff recommendation.
Alessio, second.
All right, we have first by Dunbar. I heard Vice Chair Alessio on the second. Roll call vote, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Alfredo Pedroza,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Mayor Ellsworth is muted. Please press *6 to unmute.
Jeff Ellsworth.
Yes, from Jeff Ellsworth.
Thank you. Carrie Dorman,
Yes.
John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you, everyone. Let's move on to item 9.3, generator for the Saskell Gateway Transit Center. This is found on page 83 to 99. I think Rebecca's going to be reporting out.
Correct. Good afternoon, Chairman Pedroza and members of the board. My name is Rebecca Schenk, and I am the program manager for public transit here at NVTA. As the chairman mentioned, I'm reporting on the Saskell Gateway Transit Center and a request for a generator. And today we're asking that the NVTA board authorize the executive director to execute and make minor modifications to construction agreement number 21-18 with Mel Electric Inc. to purchase and install a backup generator for the Saskell Gateway Transit Center in an amount not to exceed $218,214. This is important because the Saskell Gateway Transit Center houses all of NVTA's administrative staff, its customer service office, and is the hub of the Vine Transit system. The Saskell Gateway Transit Center, like much other areas in Napa, did lose power as a result of the Tubbs fire in 2017, again with the Kincaid fire in 2019 and the Glass fire in 2020, and has been subject to prolonged power outages as part of the power safety power shutoffs. And without electricity, NVTA staff cannot maintain operations at the transit center, nor can it really serve its customers effectively. So NVTA staff is proposing to purchase a backup generator to remedy this problem. Although this is not particularly an old building, as it was completed 7 or 8 years ago at this point. This was not something that staff foresaw at that time, and fires and power safety shutoffs were not a normal thing impacting the city of Napa. So alternatives here today, right, would be to forgo purchasing a backup generator and allow the Saskell Gateway Transit Center to kind of continue without power during fires, earthquakes, and other PSPS events. And then our other alternative would be to request that staff continue to explore other options, maybe besides a diesel generator. But indeed, NVTA staff over the last few months has looked at a variety of different options, including potentially doing natural gas and propane, looked at options of utilizing our existing solar panels, but we found that because they are already hooked into the grid, right, and we regularly feed energy back through, that is something like our solar panels are also shut off during power safety shutoffs or any type of loss of electricity. So our existing solar array is also not an option. So what goals that NVTA has does this serve? We think really that a well-functioning system is essential to adequately providing transportation for individuals with mobility challenges and members of our community who regularly rely on our transit services. And so kind of what was our process to get here? NVTA is not something that we would normally do in terms of buying a generator. And so what we ended up doing was giving tours of our facility to a couple of different local electrical providers, and we conducted site tours with Transdeb and 3 local electrical contractors. And then we received quotes from Schaefer Electric, Mel Electric, and Napa Electric. And the lowest quote that we received was from Mel Electric at a total cost of just over $198,000. And so our funding today, we're looking to use Transportation Development Act funds, including that $198,000 in total cost for the generator and its installation, a 10% contingency, which then brings us to the total of the $218,000 that we have quoted in the memo. And so the next steps on this, if we get approval today, would be to finalize the contract and then have Mel Electric move forward with the installation. And just to recap, today I'm asking for permission as part of item 9.3 to authorize the executive director to execute a construction agreement with Mel Electric in the amount of $218,214. And with that, I'll open it up for questions.
All right. Thank you very much, Rebecca, for that report. At this point, I'll see if there's any director questions. We do. Director Joseph, go ahead.
Yeah. Yes, thank you for the report. I'd like to focus on the alternatives. And I know, you looked at natural gas and propane and pointed out how our solar array feeds into PG&E, and so that's not really an option.
Mm-hmm.
But 7 years later, we also know that solar panels can be retrofitted, or at least they can be designed with, I don't know what, an AC converter and a battery backup. So the question I had is, as an alternative to a diesel generator, would it have made sense to spend the money to convert our solar array to basically running the plant with a battery backup? Would that have been less expensive than a $200,000 generator, recognizing that that particular option, environmentally speaking, beats the pants out of a diesel generator? So I was wondering if you explored that as an alternative.
Sure. So what we're running into, so right now, right, like that our solar array, as I mentioned, feeds back into the overall system. And so we are basically getting a credit through our energy provider, MCE, right, throughout the remainder of the year for, the other, whatever it works out to, 11 months and 21 days or something, that we're benefiting from that solar panel, the existing solar panels being connected to the grid. So in a way, I guess the way I was thinking it through was, if we decided not to do that, I feel like the benefits that we received for those 11 months and 21 days on some level, we're weighing against using that existing solar array to maybe be tied into a battery system that we would use to serve our generator. So I think maybe our option potentially would be, and we'd have to look at where we would locate this, would be to have maybe a second and separate solar array potentially on site. but our roof is completely full with our existing array. And so our options, I guess, in this case would be over the transit bays, right? The only thing, canopies there just have to be quite tall in terms of making sure we have clearance for our buses. So we'd have to maybe evaluate the cost of that. The other option would be over our parking lot on the opposite side. We have not priced out putting in a new solar array over that system. So that'd be something potentially we could do. I mean, I guess that would be something we'd go out for design first, and then we'd go out and if that worked, then we'd move forward with that installation. So we would miss, say, this season without a generator. But yes, that could be a potential option, I guess, potentially moving forward. We just don't know what that exactly would look like to get an additional solar array and to then tie it into a battery system.
Okay, yeah, and I don't know the particulars that well, other than the idea is that the solar array that you have would be providing you with the bulk of your energy on a day-to-day basis, with the battery backup for the non.
Right, if we rewired the existing system.
That's the issue.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, there are probably some potential options there if we were to rewire the existing system.
Okay.
All right, Director, go ahead, Rebecca.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Director Joseph. Great questions. Director Dorman.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Manager Shank, for your report. So coming from Houston, Hurricane Central, I have some familiarity with generators to run public facilities. So I have a few questions. Did we look at leasing?
We did not. We did not look at leasing, say, for a multi-year period. I mean, I don't think it's something, your power safety shutoff is going to happen tomorrow, and we can lease one for the next day. So I think it would have to be kind of a long-term rental situation. I don't know. I know some wineries have done that. Oftentimes they're in leasing situations themselves, right? So they don't want to install something. In our case, we are, we own the facility and we'll be here for the foreseeable future. So we thought that owning something might make the most sense.
Yeah, and I when I say leasing, I'm thinking about I've seen leases done for quote the season, and so maybe August to December or some. But anyway, I just throw out the leasing.
Sure.
And it looked to me from the staff report, one of the problems is we lose our connectivity. Did we look as an alternative at moving our servers or putting our data elsewhere? Because I know we've had a lot of success working remotely over the last many months. Did we look at that?
We did not. We did not look at, okay, what could we do as opposed to, I guess, having a generator. I mean, that would solve one problem, which is staff's ability to work remotely. It would still leave us, for example, without electricity, say, to our customer service office, or lights, say, outside when our routes start at 4:25 a.m. in the winter. But yes, that could also solve a problem. And that may be even something that we want to do concurrently, right? Is to try to give us a backup to the backup for working remotely.
And then what happens to this generator if we approve it when the new facility opens?
Oh, at the maintenance facility. So
yes,
that won't make any difference. There will actually be a diesel generator at that facility. And this generator is just going to be like at the building behind me and that I'm standing in now for the Sosco Gateway Transit Center. So it will not do anything. We currently do not have any type of backup at 720 Jackson Street at our existing maintenance facility.
So but sorry, I'm not asking a good question. So when we leave this facility, when we move everything we can to the maintenance facility, will this generator still be necessary at our current facility?
Yes, because the generator is going to be at the office building on 625 Burnell Street. And so whenever we move to the new maintenance building, I might be the only staff member, whoever is the transit manager, right, that would move down to the new maintenance facility to
Okay.
be there daily. So it would still be here for the other 11 staff members, or however many we have at that time.
Okay. And then have we looked yet at fuel contracts? Because I also know 52 hours, and I know we're not always going to run at full tilt, but getting the fuel can also be a problem.
Yes, so we have existing diesel on site at 720 Jackson Street at our existing maintenance facility, and contracts in place there to store that and get that replenished. So we would kind of rely on that source and bring it, it's about 3/4 of a mile up the street, bring it down from there to here at the Saukville Gateway Transit Center. So that's our current kind of plan. But again, that kind of comes into play to your prior question of, okay, what happens when we move from our maintenance facility from 720 Jackson Street to Sheehy Court? And that's something we're going to have to think through. Like if we are still able to keep our diesel at 720 Jackson Street, and maybe the city could carve out a small section of that lot, or if we're storing our diesel down at Sheehy Court, and then we have a longer transportation route.
And then what is the source of funding for the 218,000?
Sure, that's our Transportation Development Act funds. So we don't have any particular grant funds or something available for that. That's our normal operational costs basically for our transit system.
And does that do any bad thing to our budget, or have you guys been thinking about this for a while?
We have been thinking about this, and I'll talk about this a little bit in the next item in transit, but our transit budget came under last year because of the funding that we had cut. And so we think that there is space to do this with the 218,000.
Great. And then one, sorry, I missed it. That's great. Thank you. I missed this as a possible alternative. Have we looked at getting a portable with priority delivery on an as needed basis, which I realize the difficulties of that, but just curious.
Sure. No, we have not looked at on a portable on an as needed basis. That's something.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you, Norman. And I believe we have Director Ramos.
Thank you, Chair. You know, my comments, I won't repeat what other directors have mentioned in terms of alternatives. I'm very concerned with the proposal to move forward with diesel, especially in light of the Bay Area Air District's request that we as governmental agencies and officials, that we become diesel free by 2033. And seeing that there may be, although it may be more expensive, that there are alternatives to rewiring our current solar system to utilize battery backup, which is certainly a far more progressive and sustainable option that allows us to move off of diesel, which is incredibly important for all of our jurisdictions going forward to meet our climate sustainability goals. I would just like to suggest that perhaps staff look at some short-term solutions of on-demand should we need to have a generator for those PSPSs or other types of outages that are more likely to occur during this time period of August to November, but to alternatively look at what are our solutions, what are the possibilities for battery backup generation or other non-diesel generation. I want to put that out there because I am concerned that this really does fly in face of what the Air District is asking all of our governmental agencies to commit to by 2033.
Sure. And in terms of, the lifespan of this diesel generator, I think it would for what it's worth, right, exceed its useful life in about a 10-year period. And so we might be, potentially looking at some other options. So I don't think that we'd necessarily not hit the 2033. For what it's worth, we have spent the last basically 8 months is when we started doing this, right? And we have tried to look at different options, and we're kind of coming to you now after that 8 months. This might be another, 8-month excursion that we could look into things. The only thing being unfortunate is that if we are hit this season, right, that we don't have something portable lined up at this point. I'm sure probably others do, and that we don't know if there is a good viable alternative to put in additional solar panels at this location. But if that's the board's direction, that's what we'll do.
Thank you, Rebecca. Let's go with Director Krause and then Director Dunbar.
Thank you. Couple of things come out at me. One, I totally agree with Director Ramos's observations about the pollution potential of diesel, the black carbon, the whole thing that goes along with that. We've really got to not do that if there's a viable alternative. So I do know that because at my personal home, in fact, I was just in a conversation before this meeting started with Director Miller, that you can have both solar panels that feed into the grid as well as into a battery. And the other day, when we went into a PSPS, it took 30 seconds for my battery to take over, and it supplied the home for the 4.5 hours before the city generators came up. So the technology is there. There have been tremendous strides made with stored energy. And the trick is to have enough stored energy to get you through the amount of time that you think is reasonable, like 72 hours, let's say. And then, during that time, you're going to get some recharge from your solar panels. But anyway, so that's my support is towards going with batteries. Another advantage of batteries is during peak periods, which right now I think starts at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and goes to 8 or 9 o'clock at night, when energy demand is high, you can have the batteries automatically kick in and eliminate that peak charge that you, at least I get it, would get it here at my home. I don't know if that same thing applies commercially. So there's another thing in favor of battery storage. The other thing is looking at the proposal for the generators. You have you're recommending a 130 kilowatt generator, I believe. But the other proposals were for bigger generators. And I'm just wondering if those other proposals, because there's a heck of a lot of difference in the amount of power necessary to power a 250 kW generator than a 130. So those are one, how much power do you actually need? Two, another alternative might be a natural gas. I don't know what the natural gas availability is down there at the transportation center, but certainly a natural gas generator or a propane generator, I think, would be much easier on the environment. And that's all the comments I have. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, and just to kind of reference, because that's not one thing that we've talked about, that I believe, right, one of the quotes was for a larger generator. We asked them for a quote for the smaller size generator, right, at this 130 kW, but they didn't provide an updated quote. And basically what we kind of came to the conclusion is that we didn't need that larger one. We thought with the 72 hours, as well as having the diesel right available at Jackson Street, that we could sustain ourselves with that size generator. So that's why we opted for the smaller one in size.
All Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you, Councilmember Kraus.
One additional comment is we purchased a diesel generator to supply power to one of our mobile home parks during a PSPS. We awarded that contract, I believe, 9 months ago. So far, we've got a concrete pad to put the generator on, but no generator yet. So I wouldn't expect this to happen anytime soon.
Got it. Thank you, Director Kraus. Director Dunbar, and then Director Garcia, and then we'll repeat for second round.
Yeah, just I want to caution us to assume alternatives would protect us when we need protecting. You never know when the power is going to go out, but guess what? We're in the middle of a PSPS right now. Parts of Napa County have lost or have had their power turned off this week, and we're going to see some more days like that. So these other ideas, I think, are really good long-term solutions. We're not going to get a battery installed. We're not going to get a new solar array installed. We're not going to get other options for this year, for sure. I don't know, Director Kraus, how long it takes to get a diesel generator delivered these days, but it sure seems to me like that would be a more efficient way to get immediate protection now, knowing that the frequency of its use will be very limited. This is emergency operation. I would agree if this was more daily operational. Of course, we're not looking to go with diesel anymore. Taniamfo has a diesel generator attached to our community center right now for the existing PG&E shutoffs. We've looked at, hydrogen. We've looked at other sources. Nothing's online anytime soon with these alternatives. So I think there are two things we have to consider here. One is the immediate need. And to me, the idea that we could lose our public transit system to a PSPS, not only a planned power outage, but maybe an unplanned power outage, that makes me very nervous that we do not have a backup system in place. So I have a concern about as quickly as we can put a backup system together. May not be the perfect system for long term, but it gets us through at least this season. Maybe it's leasing a unit for a year. It's an insurance policy. We don't know how much it's going to be used, but to get into the other sources like solar arrays, we put solar arrays over our community center parking lot. It's a great alternative. How many years will it take to design and build that? And so I'm worried about the long-term risk, waiting for other options. And I think we needed a very immediate solution. May not be the best solution, but it's one that's going to protect the system.
Thank you, Director Dunbar. Director Garcia.
Just appreciate the discussion to this point. I think it's important to have the power there. I think a short-term for getting through the season would work. I'd like to explore the cost presented to us for a solar system that would help provide more ongoing power, battery system. We got to get work up here on diesel generators, but that's my suggestion. So I'd like to see a proposal on that for a longer term, at least a generator seasonally and the other.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Garcia. And what I will add is, I think this has been a great conversation, and it's a conversation we should be having. I think there's consensus on we need to lead by example as government, and we should. But I also think Director Dunbar's very pointed comments of these are core services, essential services, and I think there's short-term needs. I originally was leaning towards the leasing option. My concern is when we want to lease one, everyone else is going to want to lease one, and the pricing is the concern. If we simultaneously get a generator, we start working on the things that we have been hearing today, getting solar, trying to look at exploring, different energy sources. That needs to happen simultaneously. And if we get to that point quicker, we can always sell our generator. There's an ability to do that. But again, to support the core operations, I do believe we go forward with this today, at the same time exploring all the other alternatives that we talked about. I'm going to go to Vice Chair Alessio, and then Director Sedgley, and then Director Doring.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you everybody for your comments, and Manager Schenk for your report. You know, when you hear diesel, it just kind of repels you or most people, I know us. And so it's just, you know, the initial is just like, oh no, diesel. That said, as just shared, this is an essential service, and this is something that we may need tomorrow. Let's hope not. And so there is that short-term, long-term that we have to look at. And I think for the short term, we really don't have much of a choice. We need to do something that we can meet that need. Whether that's whether we could do that leasing, that would be great. But I think our chair just made a really good comment about that. Unless we can do a long-term lease for a year, in the meantime, until we get a one-year lease, until we can get this actually purchased, or an alternative long-term plan. But I don't want to wait and delay. This is too important that we have this service available. So I support this, the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Vice Chair Lesio. I think Director Sedgley and then Director Doring.
Yeah, if there's an urgent need, it's been urgent since the beginning of summer or last winter. And United Rental will drag one in there on a month-to-month rental basis, and Mel Electric can hook it up, and that would be the fastest way to get backup power if it's so urgent right now. Even the installation of a built-in transfer switch, permanent installed generators can take a long time. If there's an urgent need, rent one from United Rentals and chain it up down there, and you got your power. But I agree, setting an example for burning diesel as backup is not a good example for NVTA to set.
All right, thank you, Director Sedgley. Director Doring.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with a lot of the environmental concerns that are expressed. I think I'd like to have just more functional, practical information from staff as to the implications when power goes out. Director Dunbar said we lose transit, and I don't really know what that means. What has happened in the past in terms of just the functionality of our system, getting our buses around to service folks who need them? So that's one question. Then with respect to, there's a wholly unrelated question. With respect to the proposals, I note that the Schaefer proposal is really heavy on the labor. 284,000 is twice the amount of labor. The parts are pretty similar to the other, well, a little higher. But do you have any idea why it would be double the labor? Because I think that's something to drill down on. Maybe we never will need that kind of the 275 kW, but there may be some more exploration there. But really, I'm focused on what happens. What are the implications really with respect to potential loss of transit? I think we need to focus in on that.
Sure. And so, I mean, we currently, do not have electric buses available. We will have some this fall. And so kind of looking at what kind of currently happens, so electric buses and their ability to charge aside moving forward. But what happens is it's really just a communication problem. So, the buses can still leave, for example, the transit yard, they're on CNG or on diesel, and they get fueled every night. So they can still go along their routes. What tends to happen though is that they, although they have the GPS system on them, and the GPS is going, is pinging, so to speak, and telling you the location. What we're missing kind of on our end is where that GPS signal gets picked up. So like, for example, people in customer service don't know where the buses are really to inform others or be able to track them, for example. And they don't have computer access or phone access, and whenever you would call the customer service office, maybe if you were asking about a bus coming, we don't end up having phone service, so we can't answer those questions, I guess, or let people know that we are or not running. We can put things on our website, for example, but that ability to call. So we basically just lose the ability to communicate, and we lose our lights. And staff cannot remote into any of our existing files and such. We can access, say, like our website or something that's cloud-based, but nothing that's on our servers. So it's a communication problem. problem. And then longer term, moving forward, it would just be about potentially charging buses, right? But we'll have multiple locations in order to do that. So it wouldn't necessarily be all at the Saskell Gateway Transit Center, be spread out among a number of places. So I don't know that will be problematic. And then to your second question about Schaefer's, so I think part of the reason that Schaefer's costs are much higher on the labor side was that who had proposed a much larger generator. And so I think the installation costs for that larger generator and the corresponding work that needed to be done with that is what drove Schaefer's updated costs. And as I mentioned, we did request that they give us a quote for a smaller generator, which I was presuming would have a corresponding lowered labor costs, but they did not respond in time for the deadline.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Director Doring. Let's kind of get last round of questions. Director Dunbar and then Director Dorman.
Very quickly, a follow-up, Rebecca, how would loss of power impact our ability to provide emergency transit services? We have seen multiple times, especially with wildfires and evacuations, certainly at the Veterans Home, but throughout the county. Could you still operate efficiently and safely and provide emergency support services with our transit fleet if we also are without power?
Yes, it comes down to are our cell phones working? Because that's what kind of, I think, what we've relied on the past whenever the electricity has gone down and we have not been able to use like our existing phone system for communication. Then if cell phones are down, then the answer is no, unless, I don't know if Kate, if you have any other thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, during the 2017 fire, I had all of my belongings and in my car, so I didn't feel comfortable driving it. So I rode my bike all over the valley looking for cell service to communicate to our transit system when I was getting emergency information. It wasn't ideal, but yeah, I mean, it worked. I just think that, we're relying more and more on technology now than we ever have before. And I think, the other thing that our buses do really well at is they count who's getting on board and they take pictures of them. And that information, if we're evacuating, is not available to us until we get power again. So there's a number of things that just are not ideal. But rather than beating a dead horse on this, I think my recommendation would be that we move forward with this contract. And that we actually research the cost associated with building out solar canopies at the transit center and pursue grant funds, because I think there's a lot of grant money out there. We can reuse this or resell this generator we can reuse it at the maintenance facility or we can resell it. So I think for a short-term fix, this is what I would recommend that we continue to do, but that staff make a commitment to you that we really look at identifying grant funds to make the emergency backup power a lot more sustainable.
And just to finish my thought, Chair, I agree with what Kate just described. I would absolutely advocate that we look into the solar arrays over the parking lot. Probably not feasible over on the bus side, but certainly on the west side. And I agree. I think we all probably agree that diesel should not be our go-to option. It's a dirty alternative, but I worry first and foremost about the immediate urgent need. We shouldn't be talking about this in August, frankly. We probably should have been talking about it, 6 months ago, but we're talking about it now. And I think we need a quick solution.
Yeah. And I think internally,
Go ahead, Rebecca. Right.
And I think internally, right, we tried to look at a bunch of different options, but over the last 6 months thinking, okay, is there an option besides diesel? Could we hook it up to the natural gas? What could we do with propane? Could we do this solar, right? And then it kind of came to a point where there wasn't another viable alternative that we saw. And so that's kind of why we came together on this generator side of things, for better or for worse.
All right, so we still want to take some public comment, but Director Dorman, go ahead.
Thank you. What is the delivery time on this generator and is it guaranteed?
Probably nothing is guaranteed at this point in time. I'm sure whether what industry that you are in, right? If you're waiting for glass to bottle, if you're waiting for a new set of a bike or something along those lines, it's not guaranteed. So we did have kind of a quote in their proposal, but I don't think we can guarantee that by any stretch.
Well, what have they told us then?
Right, that we could get one, and again, it would be between 30 and 60 days upon contract execution, but we'd have to execute that contract, right? And then we'd have a period of time. So in the meantime, we still might want to look at a United rental for the month of September or something along those lines.
And is this the contract? I'm sorry, I'm really stuck on why we don't just lease until we figure things out. So is there a way to sign this contract and still look at a lease? And then is there a walk back on the contract?
I don't think as the agreement is currently written, but maybe I'd ask Deanne. And you know what, in order when we sign this, that there's like a deposit due on the generator. So I think that if we're not going to do this, then we wouldn't put the deposit on the generator and we wouldn't sign this contract, because really what the lag time on this is not the installation of this. That should be fairly quick and straightforward. It's the lead time on purchasing that generator.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Director Dorman. Appreciate your questions. Laura, do we have any members of the public that wish to comment on this item?
We do. Okay. Let me pull it up here. We have Michael Baldini for public comment. I'll unmute you now.
Good afternoon, Chairman Perdosa. I support, as chairman of the Citizens Advisory Committee for the Napa Valley Transportation Authority, Kate Miller's, Executive Director Kate Miller's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. All right, is there any other member in the public that wishes to address the board?
I do not see any further comment. Oh, wait, there is one.
All right.
Napa resident Justin Hull. Justin, I'll unmute you now.
I want to say yes, if it'd be easy for that building, because I don't want the power shut off in that place, so that'd be a good one.
Thank you, Justin. All right, I think we've gone through public comment. See no one else, Laura. I'll bring it back to the board and entertain a motion. Director Dunbar.
I'm not sure I'm going to have the exact right language here, but I'm going to make a motion that we lease a emergency backup generator for the immediate short term and direct staff to pursue other longer term options for emergency generator backup, including solar array, battery power backup, or some other alternative to diesel.
Second.
All right, so we have first by Director Dunbar. I did not hear the second. I apologize. Doring and Director Dunbar, just in that motion, can we also, as we're looking at leasing, I just want to know how it compares to purchasing, right? So we understand what the benefit is of short-term leasing versus purchasing. So
what I would also ask the board to consider, since as far as I'm concerned, this is an urgent issue. We can't wait a month. So I would also ask the board to give the chair and vice chair and executive director the authority to make a decision on a lease, assuming it is more cost effective than purchasing a system.
I accept the amendment. Second.
Look, I think we should just need to understand, because I think there's going to be some minimums on what these generator companies will put on, right? So they're not going to allow you to rent it for a few days or weeks. It might be long term. So we just need to understand what that means from a financial impact to the organization. So, but we have a motion on the floor from Mayor Dunbar, second by Director Doring. Roll call vote, please.
Point of clarification, then we're not proceeding with staff's recommendation. We're crafting a kind of a hybrid we rent a generator until we can figure out a better alternative.
That's correct.
Okay.
All right. So we have a motion on the floor. We have first by Mayor Dunbar, second by Director Doring. Roll call vote, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Alfredo Pedrosa,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Carrie Dorman,
Yes.
John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. Thank you very much. Vice Chair Alessio, you have your hand raised.
Yes, just real quick, I'm wondering if the director can give us a report our next board meeting, if we can get an update on this, or we can provide an update, because it might land that we're back to the same conclusion that was recommended by staff, but if we can give an update next month on the agenda.
Yeah, sure thing.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Vice Chair Alessio, and to the directors, a great conversation. Thank you very much. Let's move on to item 9.4. This is an informational item, Biden transit update. Rebecca, take it away.
Great. So today I'm going to give you an update, and this board item 9.4 is informational only on the fourth quarter operational summary, and that encompasses the months April through June of 2021. And so just for a calendar of events kind of during this past quarter. So on April 7th, just a reminder of 2021 was when Napa County moved into the orange tier when California was still operating under the tier system. And as we had seen, whenever we went from, say, the purple to the red, and then again, when we went from the red to the orange, we saw an increase in transit ridership as more places were open to visit. And people were more willing to travel. And then on May 9th in 2021, we had a Vine schedule change, right, where the routes 10 and 11, which had been operating strictly on a Saturday schedule, went back to their kind of pre-COVID schedule. So we basically had additional hours and runs on each of those routes. We continued to operate the on-demand in the city of Napa that we had been operating since really the start of COVID, but we also added the routes N and S traveling north and south. And then we extended the shuttle hours on Friday and Saturdays in Calistoga and St. Helena. So you'll see, in Yountville and in Calistoga. So you'll see those changes and impacts to the numbers. And then finally, towards the end of this quarter, with about 15 days left of this quarter, was on June 15th, where the state of California kind of reopened and many of the restrictions were lifted in the case of transit, with the exceptions of masks, since we are under TSA. It's similar to the rules that we follow as though you are, say, traveling in an airport. And so the mask mandate never was lifted on transit, and it looks like it's going to continue at this point with the extension just yesterday through January of 2022. So just wanted to kind of paint that picture. And then here on our local service, and local service being within the city of Napa, our service was set up in a way that we continued to have, low ridership compared to where we'd want to be in terms of our minimum thresholds. But we did, from the third quarter of 2020-21 to the fourth quarter, we did see about a 32% increase in our ridership. So once again, we are seeing increases there. And then similarly on our regional service, and this is our routes 10 and 11, we weren't operating our 10X or 11X during this period. We also saw an increase from the third quarter to the fourth quarter. And in that case, it was about a 27% increase. But again, we're still well below our minimum threshold when we look at our passengers per revenue hour, which we set at 12. And then in terms of our on-demand service, especially in Calistoga, St. Helena, this is Yountville and American Canyon. Again, we saw from the third quarter to the fourth quarter, even kind of a higher increase at about 39% over the prior quarter. And this is probably where we're performing the best and are closest to kind of what our, I would say, our normal operating minimum threshold is for our passengers per revenue hour. And then kind of looking at the total ridership change. So prior to this, I had just been comparing us, say, to the fourth quarter from the prior year, but that doesn't do us any good any longer because the fourth quarter of the prior year, right, we were during COVID. And so I've kind of extended it back to look at the fourth quarter of 18-19. So that really gives you a good perspective in that you can see, for example, right, on the Route 10 that we're performing better than this quarter last year or the quarter just prior, but we are not at where we had been prior to COVID. Going in the right direction, but not at where we had been prior to COVID. And then in terms of looking at the same total ridership and the same years, but looking at VineGo, which is our ADA paratransit service, as well as all of our shuttles, you see kind of a similar trend where we're trending up, but still way below where we were in terms of pre-COVID levels during that quarter. The biggest gap really that we have between, say, where we were at 2 years ago and where we're at now is really on the VineGo side of things. And that's not surprising in that those who are riding VineGo, right, are very elderly and disabled, or are just disabled population was at most at risk in terms of COVID and was most cautious in terms of how and when they were traveling. And one of the things I just wanted to focus on this month is, right now, while our VineGo ridership is quite low, we are still providing, I guess, a very essential service to the people that are continuing to utilize that service. And so this just gives you an idea of the riders that we had in this past fourth quarter. And you'll see, right, that you'll see, you know, individual 60, right, 124 trips. We're still doing a lot of things to get people to and from, for example, the dialysis treatments that they still have to go to, or to doctor's appointments that can't be missed, or maybe to surgeries, et cetera, that can't be missed. But what we're not really seeing, and why kind of the numbers for VineGo are quite so low, is that we're not seeing a lot of the programs and that might have existed at the Napa Senior Center, for example, at Calabria Care, et cetera, which were regular sources of ridership. And just on the VineGo side of things, right, we continues to be, and it kind of mirrors the population, right? That if you look kind of at the heat maps on the right or on the left, where they outline the numbers, that indeed Napa is really our center. And then we have followed by American Canyon, and kind of heading into Vallejo here. We do a lot of trips right across the American Canyon line into Solano County here in Vallejo to go to Kaiser and to different dialysis centers there. And then we have less trips up Valley, although our up Valley trips are always deceiving, because if you are taking an ADA trip, say within Calistoga, the Calistoga shuttle, for example, or the St. Helena shuttle or the Yountville trolley might be doing that trip. These are really trips where, say, someone from Calistoga is traveling, say, to Napa or to Vallejo or something along those lines for their visits. And then, so where does that kind of bring us? So continuing to see this upward trend from the third quarter to the fourth quarter, and with the return of NVUSD to school, which actually started today, we did institute a series of changes that started just this past Sunday. So we do have the return of the 11X, which is a commute express service that takes you from Napa through American Canyon to the Vallejo ferry terminal. And that corresponds with the ferry trips. Ferry trips just returned to a kind of a more normal schedule as of July 1st. So we're coordinated with their schedule now. We kind of have longer hours in the AM on the routes N and S, and our Vine on-demand service within the city of Napa. And kind of the reason being there is that people trying to get to school on time at the high school and middle school level can use those routes. And then also starting Monday, we had 2 new routes in the city of Napa. We have the fixed route E serving the Shirtlift neighborhood and the fixed route W serving the Westwood neighborhood. And so no real preliminary numbers quite on that. We're just 2 days in, and really today is the test with school's return. My son and I got the W today to Sheer for his first day of school ever, really. And then we are returned the American Canyon School Tripper, and that's going to servicing the middle school and high school. So that's back this year as well. And so we'll see whenever you get a report after the next quarter. So that would encompass, August or July, August, and September. So you'll get that report in October. We'll see what the August 15th changes yield. And with that, I'll open it to questions.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. And if you can just go to gallery view real quick.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to rush directors, but we do have a closed session, and some directors have made me know that they're going to have to jump off. So just wanted to preface that real quick. Any questions for Rebecca on the Vine Transit update? Seeing none, Rebecca, very great presentation. And it's great to see kids back in school, and hopefully that means more activity as well in ridership.
Yes.
And Laura, do we have any members of the public that wish to comment on this item?
Oh, we do. Napa resident Justin Hull. Justin, you are unmuted. Go ahead.
I will make it quick here. If the new Milk Creek will not start September 7th, how the kids gonna catch the level south at 2:10 or something, or 2:08? It will miss it.
When Camille Creek School starts on the 7th and the transfer of Saw School at Kansas, or which transfer, sorry, is this?
Yeah, South Market.
Let's talk about that. We're going to have to coordinate that so we can make sure that that works. And we'll do that offline. I know we talked about it a little bit the other day, and we'll try to find a way to make that transfer work.
And other thing is, Becca, is if the in the winter next year, are you guys going to turn back to letter D, or no, we're going to continue to letter E?
That's a good question. I don't have a crystal ball. I think that's going to depend on what ridership is doing overall on our fixed route, and what our wait times look like on demand, if we can continue to operate that, or if we have to go back to a full fixed route system because the demand is quite high and on demand can't service it. So I'm not sure. I think I'll have a better idea in about 2 months after we see what the 2 new routes, how that impacted on demand. So that's a to be determined.
All right. Thank you, Justin. And thank you, Rebecca, for fielding those questions. All right. This was an informational item only. Thank you very much, Rebecca. Let's move on to future agenda items. I don't see any, so we do have a need for closed session. This is Public Employee Performance Evaluation Government Code Section 54957B1, Title Executive Director. And at this point, we will move into closed session. Our councilwoman, Deanne, will be on there as well. So someone is going to move us, right, Laura?
I will be moving you.
All right, thank you.
This is Kathy.
Kathy, thank you very much for moving the directors to closed session.
Everyone stand by as you move to your breakout room.
I have moved Kate over.
Pardon me?
I moved Kate over.
She's not in the closed session.
Oh, okay.
All right, everyone's in.
Can I pause the recording? I can't pause the YouTube.
All right, I'm gonna wait. Well, I don't think we need to wait since we don't need a quorum to adjourn, but all right, so Laura, are we recording you? Kathy, are we recording?
We are.
All right, so we are back from closed session. We did not have a reportable action, and we will adjourn to our next special meeting, which is Monday, September 13th. At this point, we are adjourned. Thank you much. Thank you, everyone.
You did it on time. Good job.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Laura,
Yes.
yeah, this is Justin. You and Kathy sent me a package agenda from this time.
Oh, yes, you should have received the agenda packet, but
Yes, I'm
Hi,
Mayor.
Director Garcia. I'll make sure that you get it. Carrie Sanderlin was in last time and she was the one distributing it on my behalf. So I'll make sure next time that you have it.